It's great to be back. It truly is my 76th visit here. And I also just want to re-echo what Karen said. My first MIXiii I went to in Miami, and it was not good, it was phenomenal. And I'm hoping that it's going to continue in that vein. And what we're going to do now is we're going to have a little bit of a fireside chat. Why don't you come up, and I'll be able to share more about you in person. Come on up. So it's a pleasure to be here again. It's sort of like Miami is a little bit like Tel Aviv, no?
Very much so.
And what I wanted to share with the audience is, first and foremost, is what is your connectivity to Israel? I mean, you flew here, you came here, you have a huge passion. What is this exact connectivity?
You know, I remember coming to Israel for the first time, and it was with a wonderful gentleman that's sitting next to me, Maurice Blumenfeld, and I was working for GE, and we went to go look at some ultrasound companies, and it was my first startup company that I was doing, and GE had just acquired the company, and that was close to 25, 30 years ago, and I've had an incredible affinity for it because that actual company was a company that used technology from Israel. And it was a GPS system that was used to put on helmets to track missiles, and it was developed by Raphael. And it's little did I know that that technology was the key thing for me to sell my first company. It turned out that my second company that I developed similarly had technology that came from Israel on the robotics side, working with the team at MIT. So I just realized that there's so much technology that comes out of Israel early on that I was enamored by it. And then finally, a decade later, I had the opportunity to run Insightec, which to me is one of the most remarkable stories of a technology company that came out of Raphael.
Fantastic. And like myself, you attended your first MIXiii in Miami, and maybe you want to share.
I did.
You want to share a little bit about that, because the energy that was there was phenomenal. The interconnectivity of not just the Israeli CEOs, but the indigenous people from Miami. And if people don't realize it, Miami is now becoming the #1 state to be supportive of Israel, not just in terms of political reasons, but in terms of capital and technology transfer from the hospitals, from the universities and whatnot. So maybe you can share a little bit about the atmosphere that you witnessed at the MIXiii.
So, you know, when I got the call from Corinne about what was going to happen with the mini MIXiii, I immediately said, she asked me if I could be the co-chair. I said, absolutely. I mean, it wasn't even a question and a doubt. And then I started on this Zoom call. She was like, oh, don't worry, we'll take care of everything. And, you know, I started getting nervous. I mean, what am I supposed to do? Is anybody going to show up? You know, I signed some of my people to help to kind of coordinate this stuff. So, you know, a week into it, you know, a week left, and, oh, don't worry, everything's going to be taken care of. When I walked in and I saw what I saw with these 18 companies, you know, and one of them is I'm the chairman of a company called Momentous, which is was incubated with Peregrine, with Eyal Lifshitz, who's here in the audience, and I was blown away. I was absolutely blown away because the dignitaries, the people that were there, I knew a lot of the people. I knew the people from the hospitals, the chief medical officers, the hospital that were looking at this thing, business leaders, BioFlorida. I'm a recipient of a lifetime award with BioFlorida and very much involved in the ecosystem, and has been spending 20 years trying to build a life science world down in South Florida, you know, and when I saw my passion of seeing the transfer in my life and how it's had an impact in my life, and where I know the technology that I've developed has impacted millions and millions of lives, and a lot of it is attributed to Israel, and then all of a sudden seeing that come to life was so critical, and it was amazing, and I think it's the beginning of something pretty remarkable. I think there is incredible synergy And there's a sense of wanting to really make something big happen in life sciences in South Florida. And there's such an incredible community of Israeli supporters down in Florida, but in South Florida in particular. We've had a massive influx of folks coming in from California, New York in particular. And they all want to see what used to be Miami, which was a tourist place where you go down to Miami Beach, you go to get on a ship. It was all tourism. But now what we're really seeing, and we've done 2 studies already, and what we're seeing is that we now know that the life sciences development in South Florida is real. It's coming. And I think MIXiii and keeping it in Florida and having this grow, I think is going to be really, really exciting. Glad to be part of it.
Maurice, we were talking before about your grandpa, su abuelo, and from Puerto Rico. And besides the people from California and New York coming to South Florida, there's a huge Latino community that's also extraordinarily pro-Israel. And I remember the excitement for me at the MIXiii was when the mayor of Miami came up and his energy. And I find it almost parallel coincidental that this year we discovered that the Americas by Christopher Columbus was actually Jewish. And what a lot of people don't know as well is that Luis de Torres, the first person to settle in America, was his interpreter. And he was Jewish. He was a Marrano. And he told Christopher Columbus, if I go back to Spain, I'm going to get killed. And he let him stay there. So now we have this huge direct connectivity of the Latino community. Maybe you could talk just a drop about that, because that energy of wanting to help Israel and Israeli companies was not just from the indigenous American population, but also all the Latinos that are now settling in Florida as well.
Yeah, I think when you look back at, when I think of Miami, it's geography, geography, geography. And one of the things that actually made South Florida, there were 2 really important inventions that happened that made South Florida happen. One was the air conditioner.
Air conditioning.
And the second one was the railroad with Henry Flagler. And then all of a sudden, what was swamp started to become land. And then I would say Miami goes through these transient episodes because of location. And a lot of people in the 60s started to come from Latin America, from Cuba, from Central America, and from other countries, Colombia, Venezuela, Argentina. And there was one reason, the political turmoil in their countries and freedom. And people who come when they lose everything are people that are resilient, because they have to start all over again. And it's that similarity in that culture that I think ties very much to Israel. And there's an understanding of that. And if you look at a good example, the Cuban community, during the 60s, they came with nothing. Resilient people. They're considered by many the Jews of the Caribbean. And they would come to Miami and they would do whatever job they had to do. You had PhDs, doctors, taxi drivers, cleaning houses. One of the CEOs of one of the most successful companies called Mastech, multi-billion-dollar company, used to, from being a senator in Cuba, was delivering milk to make ends meet. And what we saw and what you see is this sense of resilience in the Miami community that I think is really translated into what is the magic in Miami.
Just to amplify that, the University of Florida just bought Scripps for $1 billion. I personally believe over the next decade, Florida will be the center of biotechnology and biolife sciences. It'll take about a decade, but it's going to surpass San Francisco and some of the other major ports that for the last 30 years. And when I say the last 30 years, you and I have been in the industry for over 3 decades. And what is your opinion, if you look back at 2020, not just biotech, but there were about 1,000 plus IPOs on NASDAQ.
Yeah.
And there are other great exchanges here too. I know there's somebody here from the New York Stock Exchange, great exchange also. Then in 2022, that number went from 1,035 down 85% to 150, 85% decrease. Where do you see the capital markets coming back? Because the Israeli ecosystem, the biotech, not just the therapeutics, but devices and digital tech, are wondering, when is this market coming back?
You know, I think it cycles. I remember when we went public with Mako, it was February 14th, 2008. And you know what happened a month later. And there were only 13 IPOs that came out that year. We were one of them. MasterCard was another one. But we were the only medical device IPO. And over the last, I would say, 3 or 4 years, it's been dry, especially in our space, the medical device, and also life sciences. And it's I think these things are cyclical, and I think that we're starting to see we're starting to see some IPOs coming out and trading well. I think that a big part of it is the overpricing of and the demand of IPOs that came out in the last 2 or 3 years, and they were just, and then all of a sudden the price drops, the multiples dropped. We started seeing what were 14x multiples off of revenue going down to 4 to 5. So everybody was losing money, and I think we're starting to see the uplift. I think the valuations have gone down, and I think we're gonna start seeing there's some optimism that the markets are opening up for the device business.
That's great. Well, I want to thank you, Maurice, because having an icon like you here in Israel gives a little bit, more than a little bit, tremendous optimism going forward. Muchas gracias.
Thank you. Thank you very much.